Most people spend their entire lives waiting for luck, waiting for help, waiting for the right moment. I knew a man who waited too, until one day, he realized something terrifying. Nobody was coming to save him. Mark believed that life would eventually fix itself. He thought success would come later, that one day the right opportunity would appear and everything would finally start to change. But years passed. The job stayed the same. The problems stayed the same. And the life he kept waiting for never arrived. One day, Mark noticed something strange. The people around him were changing. Friends were moving forward, starting businesses, building families. And somehow, Mark was still standing in the same place. He told himself it was temporary, that things would change soon, that success was just taking a little longer to arrive. But deep down, Mark felt something he didn't want to admit. One evening, Mark met an old friend, someone he hadn't seen in years. They sat together and talked about life. And just like always, Mark started explaining why everything had been so difficult for him. He talked about the job he hated, the opportunities he never received, the unfair situations that kept appearing in his life. And for a moment, his friend simply listened. Mark finished speaking and leaned back in his chair. For a few seconds, his friend said nothing. Then he looked at Mark and asked a simple question. What if nothing is actually holding you back? What if the reason your life hasn't changed is because you're still waiting for someone else to fix it? Mark didn't answer right away. The question stayed in his mind. For the rest of the evening, he barely spoke. When they finally left the bar, Mark walked home alone. For years, Mark believed that help would come. A lucky break, the right opportunity, someone who would open the door. But that night, for the first time in his life, he began to doubt it. When Mark arrived home that night, he didn't turn on the television. He didn't open his phone. For the first time in a long time, he just sat in silence. And slowly, the thought returned. What if his friend was right? What if no one was actually coming to save him? Mark sat there thinking about the last 10 years of his life, the jobs he said he would quit, the ideas he said he would start, the plans he said he would finally take seriously. And slowly, a painful pattern began to appear. Every year, Mark waited for something, a better moment, more confidence, a sign that it was finally time to start. But that moment never came. And suddenly Mark understood something he had never admitted before. He wasn't waiting for the right moment. He wasn't waiting for luck. He was waiting for someone else to change his life. For years, Mark believed that someone would help him. A mentor, a boss, a lucky opportunity that would finally appear. But the truth was much simpler. And in that quiet moment, Mark finally understood the truth. Nobody had ever promised to save him. Nobody was responsible for building his life. And nobody was coming to do the work for him. All the years he spent waiting were years he could have been moving, learning, trying, failing, and trying again. The next morning, Mark woke up earlier than usual. Not because someone told him to, not because the perfect opportunity appeared, but because he finally understood something. Waiting had changed nothing. But action, even the smallest action, could change everything. As Mark stepped outside that morning, something inside him felt different. For the first time in years, he stopped expecting someone else to fix his life. The responsibility was his. And strangely, that truth didn't feel heavy. It felt freeing. That day, Mark learned something most people never accept. Nobody was coming to save him. But strangely, that was the best news he had ever heard. Because the moment he stopped waiting, he finally started living.